Greetings from the South Island of New Zealand. Today I want to read from Matthew 14, verse 22, and it is about Jesus walking on the water. It's the parable. So immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. Note, he'd given them an order, right? After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. So here they were, the disciples. They were obedient to what the Lord had told them to do, was to get into the boat and go to the other side. And now suddenly they're faced with a storm, life storms. Jesus came towards them walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." So note, they're faced with these very strong storm and very high waves, and they're immediately filled with fear because they're so fearful they don't even recognize the Lord when he comes walking to them on the water. They see him as a ghost. But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it really is you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." So, not only are they full of fear, but they're full of doubt, because Peter's saying, "Well, can it really be you? I'm finding it hard to believe. Tell me to walk on the water, and if I do, then I know it's you," kind of thing. "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. So see what happened there? Peter took his eyes off Jesus and looked at the storm once again. And then he was filled with unbelief. So Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat and the wind stopped, then the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. Now, these people have seen him heal people. They have walked with him. They have seen him produce fish and bread to feed 5,000 people. They have seen so many miracles, and yet now it's kind of only dawning on them that, he really is the Son of God. After they had crossed the lake, they landed at Gennesaret. When the people recognized Jesus, the news of his arrival spread quickly throughout the whole area, and soon people were bringing all their sick to be healed. They begged him to let the sick touch at least the fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. So I come back to that previous video where I talked about faith and healing and stuff. And, it's when we touch Jesus, or, and when he allows us to touch him in faith, that we are healed. And so, they begged him. They had so much faith that they knew that if they could just touch him, that they'd be healed. But I come back to the doubt and the unbelief and the fear in the disciples. I think if we think about this in life, very often, the Lord tells us to do something, and then we feel, "Okay, Lord, we're going to do it, and we're going to obey you." And the minute we start to walk in obedience, it's like the enemy comes and he throws everything at you, and then there's suddenly this big storm in your life. And this shows you that Jesus is there. He went to pray, but when they were in the middle of the storm, he was on the water. He was right there with them, and he was watching, and he was, he's waiting for them just to apply their faith, but they couldn't. In fact, when they actually looked up and looked away from the storm, and they looked at him, they had so much fear and so much unbelief that they didn't even recognize him. And this is a lesson for us in life, is that when we are obedient to the Lord, we should expect a storm, and that when we do get the storm, to always keep our eyes on Jesus, our hearts full of faith. Because when we do that, guess what? He will rescue us, and He will help us through the storm, and He'll take us to the other side. And guess what the reward's going to be? The reward is going to be that we're going to be able to have victory. That's going to be our reward. And in this case, what the reward was is that so many people came to Jesus and got healed. Now imagine when you're obedient and you fight the storm and you get to the other side and you believe Jesus and you have the faith in your heart to believe Jesus, your reward. What's that going to be? It's going to be some sort of good fruit that's going to be born, and it's going to impact so many people in a positive way. So hopefully that's blessed you. God bless you. Goodbye.